Our skies are full of mysteries. Unidentified flying objects secretly investigated by government agencies all over Europe for decades.
There has been, and indeed still is, I think, great secrecy about UFOs and also a reluctance to talk about this subject.
For the first time, we've collated sightings and reports from across an entire continent.
We have to get to the truth because the public have a right to know about these things.
Some experts insist many sightings have rational explanations.
Often you can take even the most spectacular UFO sighting and find that behind it is a very earthly explanation.
But some continue to defy understanding.
That's an object that flies, and I don't know what it is.
Are these visitors from other worlds or natural phenomena? And do our European governments know more than they ever reveal to us? The answers may lie in the untold stories of the UFO files of Europe. For decades, governments across Europe have been keeping files on UFO sightings. To this day, many of these cases remain unexplained. A UFO incident investigated by police as a criminal assault. A pilot's close encounter at 2,000 feet. And a Norwegian valley where mysterious aerial phenomena have been appearing for almost a century. 9th of November, 1979, Livingston, Scotland. 10:30 a.m. In a lonely Scottish woodland, 61-year-old forestry worker Bob Taylor has an astonishing encounter.
He's looking at the sky, and there in front of him was this massive, big dome-shaped object.
Smaller balls rolled towards him.
These objects were shaped like sea mines with about 6 legs attached.
This is the only British UFO incident ever investigated by the police as a criminal assault.
I really do think this case, even though it's got a single witness, is one of the really inexplicable incidents.
It's just so unlike my dad to talk about spaceships or anything like that.
He was completely honest and without any motive to make up such a story.
Malcolm Robinson is a UFO investigator who has long been intrigued by the Livingston case.
As a researcher, we have to get to the truth because the public have a right to know about these things.
The encounter happened just 1 mile from Bob Taylor's home. He has since died, but UFO investigator Robinson has worked with his family to piece together what happened that day. He is retracing the steps that Taylor took in his local woods.
This is the area where Robert Taylor was walking down that morning. And it wasn't until he approached this clearing that he stood transfixed when he saw something which totally bemused him. He's looking at the sky, and there in front of him was this massive, big dome-shaped object. And he's standing there. He's absolutely bemused at what he's looking at. And then suddenly, what resembled 2 Second World War sea mines dropped very, very forcibly from the underside of this hovering object and hit the ground. And they started rolling across the grass. And they started to project these rod-like projections from these spherical balls towards his person and grabbed him very, very forcibly at his hips and pulled him right down. And it was at this point that he's had this terrible smell pervading the whole area, burning, burning smell all over this location here. And then just then, he lost consciousness.
Regaining consciousness some 20 minutes later, Taylor found the object had disappeared. He staggered back to his home.
His wife could see immediately that something had happened to him. She eventually pressed out of him that he'd been assaulted by aliens. She decided that he should go to hospital.
Taylor's daughter is working in the pharmacy department at Bangor Hospital as her father is brought in.
I had a phone call down from A&E to tell me my dad had been taken in, and the first person I met was my mum, who was saying, "Oh, I think your dad's had an awful bang in the head because he's talking about spaceships."
Taylor has cuts to his legs and seems confused.
It looked as if someone had used a rotating disc, a grinder or something, to grind through his trousers where his hips were. Not something that you can easily imagine could happen in any normal way. And also a mark under his chin, about an inch square, appeared to have been grazed.
Because of the forester's injuries, the police launch a criminal investigation. The British National Archive UFO researcher Dave Clark has seen the statement Bob Taylor made to the police at the time.
I've got some extracts from the police CID report on the Livingston incident here, and in the report is a police statement that was taken from Bob Taylor himself immediately after the incident, and it's always good to look at the contemporaneous statements that people make to the police in these instances. And he says that the object he saw was about 30 feet in height. It was grey in colour, although I got the impression that the top of the dome-shaped object changed from grey to translucent continually.
Following his statement, Taylor's torn trousers are sent away for forensic analysis.
Detectives were there taking samples and photographs, and this was a full investigation by the Criminal Investigation Department.
The next piece of evidence is found by police in the woods at the scene of the sighting.
The police went to the site and they found a series of mysterious marks on the ground, almost like some kind of vehicle with a caterpillar track had been driving backwards and forwards over the grass in this clearing.
The police made an official sketch as evidence of the marks they had seen.
They indicated that an object of several tons had stood there, but there was nothing to show it had been driven or towed away. There was no rational explanation for these marks. They couldn't find any obvious explanation as to what had caused them.
Some of the grass within the confines of these marks was sheared off. The tops of the grass stalks, if you like, had been sheared off and lying within the very framework of the holes in the grass. And it was perplexing because it's very, very rare do you come across physical evidence.
But in 2012, 33 years after the event, comes a startling revelation from Bob Taylor's son-in-law. David Hammond now believes that a sketch he created may have misled people about whether the UFO had legs.
Following the incident, I'd spoken to Bob and had done some freehand sketches of what he'd described. Went through it with him quite a few times and tried to press him for detail. This is a photograph of Bob shortly after the event, and he's holding the original sketch that I did, which was later developed into a more finished drawing, which is this one here. And this pretty accurately represents what he described to me. I had suggested to Bob that this object, which he'd said was in the air, and the marks on the ground must have been connected in some way. He agreed with me, but afterwards I'd realized that I had I had led him to that. It wasn't something that he'd offered. And so I felt slightly guilty about it.
If the legs in the UFO picture are products of the artist's imagination, could there be a far more rational explanation for the marks in the forest?
It's quite possible that those marks were there on the ground before this incident actually happened. So maybe there had been some four-wheel drive vehicle there of some description that had left those marks. Bob Taylor had come along, had this experience, whatever the source of it was, and there's no obvious connection between the two things. So they don't really prove that there was an alien spacecraft or something extraordinary there. They just add to the overall mystery.
So, had Bob Taylor really seen something? Or might he have suffered a fit or hallucination?
A year before this encounter, Bob Taylor had suffered a series of inexplicable headaches for which he'd gone to his doctor and received treatment, and they'd never got to the bottom of what was causing it.
It is impossible now to establish the cause of Taylor's headaches, but police at the time did consider one possible theory.
There's a theory suggested that Robert Taylor ingested some wild berries in the forest. Now, these berries have the name of Atropa belladonna. They're very, very dangerous because if you ingest these berries, you can die. If you rub the berry fruit on your hand or your wrist, you can suffer hallucinations.
But Taylor's daughter has good reason to believe that toxic berries are not responsible for her father's extraordinary sighting.
He was a gardener and a forester all his life, so he knew not to eat anything poisonous. He would never have eaten anything like that.
Police did have more than just Taylor's word for what happened that day. They also had a vital piece of tangible evidence under analysis: the torn trousers.
These are actually the trousers that Robert Taylor wore on that eventful day. Now, as you can see, this is a very heavy ripped tear on the left-hand side of these trousers. Now, these are heavy-duty material. This is actually police-issue trousers, and as we can see on the left-hand side of the trousers, we have another tear. The forensic report clearly states this was not made by any forest debris, sharp stones, sticks, barbed wire fencing.
Nobody, including the CID, could explain how those rips occurred.
It is my contention that these rips in these trousers were made by some device that attached itself to Robert Taylor's trousers, pulling them very, very forcibly upwards.
Taylor was left with no answer as to what had happened to him that day. And the mystery was one that locals also found difficult to accept.
Dad had a quite hard time for a wee while at Livingston because there was some people calling him various names and laughing at him. And he was beginning to wish he hadn't said anything to anybody at all about it.
But despite the name-calling, Bob Taylor's character was never in doubt, and he was considered by investigators as a reliable witness.
He does come over as a completely straight, down-to-earth man who had no reason to invent a story of this magnitude. What was to be gained from it?
His story never ever changed. He always stayed. Everything was exactly like the day he saw it.
He never once suggested that he may have imagined it. He firmly believed that he saw what he said he saw.
All this makes it one perplexing case, a case that still at this point in time is totally unexplained.
Bob Taylor's case strikes me as a really good example of a genuine eyewitness account of an inexplicable phenomenon.
Within Europe's UFO files, there are cases that defy explanation. Some phenomena are witnessed so often, they provoke debate among the science community and lead to decades of field research. The Hessdalen Valley, Norway. In the early 1980s, hundreds of UFOs are spotted flying over the landscape. Over a 2-year period, The objects dart across the skies more than 20 times a week. Newspaper reports say the locals are crazy, but witnesses are certain of what they've seen.
I see a bright light. It's start moving, and then faster, and gone. What it is, I have no idea.
And for one scientist, it is the beginning of a lifelong mission to unlock the mystery behind the Hessdalen UFOs.
My reaction when I saw it was more, wow. And I think, what could that be?
Erling Strand is a Norwegian technology expert. In 1982, he hears reports of strange events in Hessdalen, a remote 8-mile-long valley with just 200 residents.
I read about it in the newspapers, and some friends of mine also thought we should maybe go up there and try to see it for ourselves.
Locals are reporting strange, glowing objects flying at high speed through the valley. Johan Arvid Aspås, now age 76, was in bed when he first saw a UFO in 1982.
Så jeg hoppet ut sengen og gikk bort til vinduet og så, og da får det et sånt lysende objekt ut i dala, da vet jeg Husum, sakte nordover, med kolossalt lys på.
UFOs had been sighted in the valley since the 1900s, but in the early 1980s, they appear with alarming regularity.
What is, I think, interesting and important about this is the fact that these UFO sightings seem to happen on a regular basis. There are so many of them over so long a period of time. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of sightings.
Despite this frenzy of activity, the Norwegian press refused to believe the local stories.
The local people up there had all different reactions. Some was a little bit afraid. The most frustrating thing for the local inhabitant was all the bad talking. Journalists writing funny things about the people up there.
One national paper even played a practical joke on the town by sending them an unusual gift. But Professor Strand is keen to investigate. In September 1982, he gathers a group of young scientists and camps out in the cold valley.
The first time, I remember it very well, we didn't expect to see something. Of course, you have read about it in the newspaper.
Suddenly, the team are confronted with a spectacular sight.
Then it showed up. A huge, bright light in the landscape. 10 to 50 meters above the ground. We estimated the size to be 3 meters.
Strand's colleague photographs the UFO to secure evidence of the sighting.
It moved around some distance, not so very far, stopped again, and went on for that for nearly 2 hours. My reaction when I saw it was more, wow. And I think, what could that be?
The group watch as the object hovers across the valley, until finally it disappears.
This is the first picture which was taken by this light, hovering just above the hillside.
The sighting, recorded in this photograph, triggers a lifetime of devotion to these mysterious aerial phenomena.
The start of Project Hessdalen was in the summer of '83. We prepared a field investigation. We collected instruments We got help from universities and military to give us some instruments. And we had a lot of instruments going up there.
For his investigation to be taken seriously by fellow scientists, Professor Strand decides not to use the word UFO.
Whenever you use the word UFO, everyone is skeptical, especially the scientists. So we decided to change the word, use another word. So we came up with the Hessdalen phenomena, and that helped a lot in the scientific community.
Equipped with a small radar antenna, the team are staggered by the results.
There was a huge amount of sightings here in Hessdalen. You can be up to 20 observations during a week. We had the radar measuring this light traveling at 30,000 kilometers an hour. We could follow something which was not seen as a light, wasn't seen at all. So there is something up there which are present in the valley, even when we don't see anything.
Even when the phenomena are invisible to the human eye, they are detected by radar, moving at incredible speeds. But what are they? One of the many theories put forward is ball lightning.
Ball lightning is something that's not entirely understood in science. It is something that's been observed by a very wide number of very credible witnesses, and it does move around very fast. It can move at speeds of a few meters per second to a few hundreds of meters per second.
Atmosphere physicist Grant Allen has studied the Hessdalen photographs.
In the photographs we've seen over Hessdalen, it's a quite clear background night sky. So this doesn't look like ball lightning. Ball lightning, from eyewitness reports, tend to last from a few seconds to a few tens of seconds. They're quite short-lived phenomena that tend to dissipate quite quickly.
What confuses Strand's team is that the moving lights appear to take many different forms.
What we have found out is that there is different types of phenomena.
The project identifies 3 different kinds of sighting: white or blue flashes, shapeless yellow lights, and a series of smaller apparitions that appear to fly in formation.
The more we study it, the more mysterious it is.
But as the project gathers momentum, disaster strikes.
In '85, we got only 1 observation, and of course we was very disappointed. And also the local people up there didn't report anymore. So we thought that this high activity period was ended.
1 year into the investigation, the lights mysteriously vanish. The chance to uncover a new phenomenon disappears as the project is shelved, until strange events in the valley, 8 years later, bring the Hessdalen UFOs right back into Arling's life.
People come to me and said, it's still going on.
1993, Norway. A project to unlock the mystery behind hundreds of UFO sightings in the remote community of Hessdalen has lain dormant for 8 years. Tired of ridicule at the hands of journalists, locals no longer reported the flying objects. But all that is about to change.
People come to me and said, it's still going on, but we don't tell about it anymore because of all the writings, the bad writings in the newspaper. And then I was thinking, maybe I should start Project Hessdalen again.
Jan Moen has lived in the valley for 56 years. As a local, he is familiar with the mysterious phenomena.
Someone have seen the light on the ground. Someone have seen it moving besides the car, and someone have seen it on the heaven, moving slowly and very fast. People don't know what it is.
The initial project left Strand with more questions than answers. But nearly a decade later, he uses new contacts across the European science community to assemble a crack team of experts.
When we started project again, more foreign scientists become interested. And we have a good cooperation with both Italian and French scientists now.
A key member of the new team, electrical engineer Bjorn Gittler-Hogge.
My expertise, electromagnetic radiation and radar and optical spectrum analysis. They really didn't have too much data at that point.
Having secured funding, the team establish a permanent base in the valley. A 100-square-foot steel container is erected to monitor the lights in the valley 24/7. The base would become known as the Blue Box.
The Blue Box was equipped with a camera system. It was special programmed to react on different light phenomena.
In 1999, surveillance cameras in the Blue Box hit the jackpot, capturing this stunning footage. But the team want to do more than capture a UFO on camera. They want to find out what it is. They begin to look for clues in the atmosphere.
We are interested to find out if there is a new kind of interference source in the atmosphere that we didn't know about.
Assisted by the Institute of Radio Astronomy in Italy, the team installed new high-frequency radar at the Blue Box.
The Italian equipment was made to detect any kind of ionized matter.
Research now focuses on one particular theory, that the aerial phenomena might be pockets of plasma in the atmosphere.
Well, everybody's seen plasma. You've seen them in neon lights. Also, you get plasma balls where you have that mysterious glowing light in a glass ball. It's essentially an excited gas, and what that means that the gas has an electrical charge and then it glows.
Plasma is ionized gas, meaning it has highly charged particles. This makes it conductive and allows it to respond strongly to electromagnetic fields. The most iconic example in nature, the spectacular Northern Lights. But the team have no evidence that ionized gas is present in the valley. Then, in 2007, a field trip yields the most exciting breakthrough yet.
It was good weather condition. Approximately 9:30, suddenly it's a...
This video was filmed as the stunned scientists observed the phenomena.
Big light erupted as I was recording. And it moved back and forth. And everybody was yelling. And then we got this picture. Then it shot off again, and everything was quiet. But the radar went on. The radar were giving echoes. It was something out there.
Immediately, the team generate an optical spectrum of the photograph. The optical image splits white light into the different colors of the spectrum. The amount of each color present gives the team new information about the light source.
The funny thing was that it had all colors, like the sun. And the continuous spectrum which we obtained points towards that we have something like a star.
The data suggests the phenomena may not have any mass at all, just star-like lights flying through the valley.
This is the photo which shows the sharp angle during the movement. If this had had any mass, you shouldn't expect it would be possible to make such a sharp angle with this high speed.
But Strand's team still have no evidence of what the phenomenon is or where it might be coming from.
Some say that there is something new mechanism in physics. Some claim that's a new part of our world which we haven't discovered yet.
If you were to ask me if there is any credible explanation for the reported sightings over Hestdalen, there's nothing that I know of in atmospheric science that can generate lights in the sky, at least insofar as we can tell from the photographs.
The Hestdalen phenomena continue to be seen to this day. And as long as they appear in the valley, Erling Strand is determined to unlock the mystery once and for all.
I hope we will manage to find out what it is, because no one has ever managed to find a solution on what it is. So maybe if it's something from our nature, if it's something from our universe, something new we will discover.
But the investigation has achieved one important goal.
In the beginning of 80s, people said that we were crazy on the media, in the newspaper. But the scientists, starting with instrument up here in Hestdalen, and said that there was something.
They lived with it so many years now, so it's not any reason to be so much afraid of it anymore.
th of June, 1977, Tancos Air Base, Portugal. A routine flight for José Francisco Rodrigues, a pilot in the Portuguese Air Force. 11:15 a.m. The wheels of his Dornier 27 lift off the runway. What Rodrigues doesn't know is that within the next hour, he would have a central role in one of Europe's most extraordinary UFO encounters, and that he'd be lucky to escape with his life.
O caso de Castelo de Bode é importante porque temos aqui significativo exemplo de uma interação física de aparente objeto não identificado com os instrumentos de bordo do próprio avião.
Rodrigues is now retired from the military and no longer talks about this shocking event. But his case was the subject of a full investigation by the Portuguese Air Force. UFO investigator Francisco Correa has obtained access to the military files on the incident.
This is a Dornier 27, a plane exactly like the one flown by Francisco Rodrigues. On the day of the encounter, he would have been flying solo.
The Dornier 27 is a German single-engine light utility aircraft popular among pilots for its aerial maneuverability. Although just 23 years old, Rodrigues is an experienced pilot, a sergeant with over 800 flying hours behind him. Rodrigues is flying over Castelo de Bode, a hydroelectric dam 85 miles from Lisbon. Less than an hour after takeoff, he notices a dark object through the clouds. He radios back to base to find out if any other aircraft are flying in the area.
Charles 74, airborne from runway 34, climbing to 2,000 feet inbound altitude on Abadan Dam. Charles 74, confirm squawk 3310.
He contacted the tower had nothing on radar, so he initiated a left turn.
Rodriguez maneuvers his aircraft to get a better view of the object.
And when almost completing that turn, he screamed. The control tower heard this scream.
At 2,000 feet, Rodriguez is face to face with something completely inexplicable.
At 11 o'clock, there was a big, round-shaped, dark object, about 12 to 15 meters wide. It stood there for 5-6 seconds, and it then, wow, went away.
As the UFO disappears, his Dornier begins to vibrate violently. Suddenly, the magnetic compass spins wildly out of control. And from an altitude of 2,000 feet, the plane slips into a dramatic nosedive.
The plane's engine was still working, but he just couldn't get hold of the plane. He was desperate, in panic, trying to get hold of the plane.
As the ground approaches, Rodriguez struggles to regain control of the aircraft. He opens the throttle, a life or death attempt to level the plane. Just above the dam, he manages to stabilize the Dornier. Francisco Correa has come to the Castello de Bo Dam, where two witnesses observed the dramatic nosedive.
There were two shepherds here who saw the airplane and saw it nosedive. And they saw it go below this hill over here, and then they saw it, bah! When the pilot turned off his engine and started to pull it off on again, it made bah! And they saw it, then the plane going just above, nice and easy.
On landing, the pilot undergoes a full medical examination. Although shaken, he's in good physical shape and immediately reports the UFO sighting to senior officers.
Pilots are often reluctant to come forward and speak about UFO sightings. They fear that they'll be ridiculed, they fear that there might be adverse consequences in terms of their career.
But the Portuguese Air Force take the report seriously and launch a thorough investigation into the incident. 35 years on from the UFO sighting, historian Joachim Fernandez has gained access to the military files.
Well, this is Francisco Rodriguez report from the Castello de Bo case. The letter from Air Force, as you can see here. The summary of his own case, Rodriguez case. And the report from pilot, report from a sighting of an identified flying object.
Rodriguez describes the object as being up to 15 meters wide, 3 meters wider than his Dornier.
And also the sketch from the object that emerged from the clouds and the encounter next to 6-7 meters from the plane. It was a scary experience.
The first mystery. Why did this large object flying at high altitude fail to appear on radar? Chris Morshead was a radar engineer with the Royal Navy for 30 years and has full faith in the technology.
When it comes to reporting objects, radar is probably far more accurate than the pilot. At higher levels, it would be extremely unusual for something that physically appeared in front of a pilot not to actually be picked up on a radar.
At an altitude of 2,000 feet, the UFO should have been detected. So the possibility remains that what the pilots saw was not a solid object at all.
Quite often you do get atmospheric situations where tricks can be played on the eye, and it very much depends on the pilot, the lighting conditions, the weather conditions around him as to what he actually sees. And it can be quite easy to make mistakes.
Since the 1950s, many UFO sightings by pilots have often been explained by a curious atmospheric phenomenon.
You can actually get mirage effects due to temperature inversions, stuff like that, which can actually sort of fool the eye into thinking that there's something there which actually isn't there.
Well, a mirage is essentially created by different layers in the atmosphere that have a different temperature, i.e. the air has different densities. And it's a bit like putting, say, a spoon into a glass of water. You see that the metal in the spoon is bent. The same happens with light passing through the atmosphere with layers of different density. So objects in the distance on the horizon can sometimes appear distorted, they can appear closer to you or further away.
But a mirage does not explain the most puzzling question of all. Why did the Dornier, an aircraft renowned for its handling, nosedive so unexpectedly whilst the engine remained operational? Professor Raul Berengel explains the dynamics of flight.
You have a low pressure above the wing and underneath the wing a high pressure.
A wing is designed so the air moves faster over the top surface than it does over the bottom. The slow-moving air beneath the wing has a higher pressure, which gives the aircraft lift.
If this phenomena goes at very high speed aside from the plane, what happens? You just lost your lift. Then the plane plunges down.
A jet passing at high speed could have sent the Dornier into a nosedive. But it doesn't explain why the magnetic compass spun wildly out of control.
Well, in order to spin a compass at that distance will be needed a force, a magnetic field generated by this object that goes around the plane. And a normal plane or a jet do not have such an amount of magnetic field.
Whatever the object was, remains a mystery.
That's an object that flies, and I don't know what it is, so it's a UFO.
But something else from that day adds an intriguing twist to the story. As Rodriguez slips into his nosedive, workers at the Castello de Bo Dam are dealing with an emergency of their own.
At the same time, pilot Rodriguez was experiencing his falling to the ground with his airplane. This hydroelectric dam was experiencing a huge, unexplainable drop of energy.
Power at the dam is restored. But the question remains whether these two strange incidents are connected, adding another layer of mystery to a puzzle that may never be completely solved.
The situation regarding UFOs is quite interesting. As an engineer myself, I'm a great skeptic. I always believe that there must be some rational explanation. Occasionally, though, there are those situations when you just can't explain the problem, the phenomena that you've seen. Whether or not that's spaceships coming from another world, who knows? Personally, I find it hard to believe that it is. I think it's probably just a natural phenomena we haven't identified.
Yes, well, as we get older and older, I'm 77 right now. You can't live forever, you know. So if this procedure I'm going to have to clean the blood doesn't work, then I've got probably a few more months to make it before my kidneys shut down, you know. So that's kind of why I'm kind of going along with the interview at this time.
You're seeing that what you went through is just too important for people not to know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just, can we start at the beginning with your military career and just walk through what exactly your experiences were?
Was drafted into the military and got into the U.S. Army. After that, I was sent to the Signal Training Center in eastern United States.
What year would this be?
58. I went through the Signal Training course. And at that time, I went through the radio teletype course and also the cryptography course, crypto. They had 5 instructors that were getting out of military service. So they pulled the top 5 students, and I was 3rd in the class. So I got pulled as an instructor.
Now, were you at this time also working yet for CIA?
No.
Not yet?
No. After one day, my boss came to me, and he said, how would you like to, you know, make some extra money? And I said, oh, money is good. So he's explained to me that he could put it through, would have to get a top secret White House Q clearance for the job, you know. And I thought, boy, must be a pretty exclusive thing, you know. And I said, well, what is this? And he said that I'm director for the CIA for Eastern United States, you know. And I said, oh, I didn't know that. And he said, you weren't supposed to. After about 6 weeks, my security clearance came through, and I got my CIA card. It was an ID card, like a credit card, where I could just go up to the door and slice it, walk right in. And my name at that time, I used a artificial name too. Never used my real name. I started working with him on the project he was on, and that was Project Blue Book, which was kind of partially a fraud.
You're saying some of the Blue Book cases were,
Yes.
were completely fictitious?
Yes. But the cases that we got came from, I think it was Fort Belvoir, Maryland.
Fort Belvoir?
Yeah, and it didn't come from the Pentagon, or it didn't come from CIA headquarters. But we would get reports about a certain sighting that they had in Mexico or Italy or something like that. And then we had people that would follow through on it, that would go out and interview the people to see if they were nutcases or if it was real, you know.
So they'd be going overseas frequently?
I wasn't, but I always stayed wise. But the people we had working with us from the CIA would do that. We would get like a new report probably a couple times a week. I was coming into the Army fresh off the farm, you know, so I really didn't have much knowledge of anything, but my boss filled me in on Project Blue Book and what they had found so far. as far as grays and aliens and the Roswell incident.
How did you feel when this first got dumped on you? When you first learned about this?
I was just kind of overwhelmed with all of this, you know. And I said to him, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be a judge of this type of thing. What's real, what's not, when I don't have much knowledge of it, you know. So...
What did he say?
He said, well, we have to build the information as we go, and you'll see how this thing is working out.
And then the other thing is, of course, you really weren't able to tell family or close friends, obviously.
No, I couldn't tell anybody. In fact, I had to take a vow that I wouldn't tell anybody. A lot of it for 40 years, and more of it for 50 years, which is up in 2010.
You're doing all this crypto work, you're looking at images, photographs, video. It's 1958, maybe the fall of 58. What happened after this?
At that time, the Project Blue Book thing kind of went pot, you know. If you remember, back in those days, they kind of declared it as a nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
they were telling the world all UFOs are misidentifications, hoaxes,
balloons,
psychological issues, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my boss came to me and he says, we've both got a new assignment. And he says, oh, I said, where are we going? Oh, he says, we're going to the Capitol. We're going to be part of the Eisenhower push. He's trying to find out something about, all about these aliens that MJ-12 was supposed to find out, but never sent back reports to him.
The MJ-12, the UFO control group, were they calling it MJ-12 at that time? Yes.
They called us in, went into the Oval Office, and President Eisenhower was there and Nixon, and they said, we called the people in from MJ-12 from Area 51 and S4, but they told us that the government had no jurisdiction over what they were doing. So being a general, past general, you didn't tell them to go to hell without any real good reason, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, I want you and your boss to fly out there. I want you to give them a personal message. And he says, I want you to tell them, whoever is in charge, tell them that to get in, they have this week, coming week, to get into Washington and to report to me. And if they don't, I'm going to get the First Army from Colorado, and we're going to go over, we're going to take the base over. I don't care what kind of classified material you got. We're going to rip this thing apart.
Eisenhower was going to invade
Area 51. Yeah, with the First Army.
So you go out with your superior.
Yes.
You fly out. You land. What happens? Can you describe this whole process? What you saw?
It took us the 13 or 15 miles south to S4 and like different garage door openings.
Okay.
And in these garage door openings, they had like different saucer crafts. The very first one had the Roswell craft in. It was kind of crashed up, but apparently every alien that was in it died except for a couple.
So you see the Roswell craft, and what are some of the others that you see?
Well, the Roswell craft was really strange because it looked like real heavy aluminum foil. We could rock next to it, and you could rock it. The whole thing probably weighed 150, 300 pounds.
Could they tell what the source of power was of this craft?
Yeah, it was like a reverse gravitational thing of some kind. In fact, one later on, I got the mathematical code for reversing gravity in a 3x5 card. I guess there are different types of grays and so on.
How did you see that evidence?
Well, at the later on at S4, we viewed the autopsy film, and then the colonel said, "What we've got in here is we're interviewing a gray alien."
All right, right there. How did you feel at that moment?
Well, I thought, boy, we had no idea we were going to see the real thing. All we saw was film.
You had to have a little bit of heart racing at that
Yes.
moment.
My boss was able to go in and had like a partial interview with him.
So what did this gray alien look like? Could you describe him a little bit?
This one looked a little bit oriental.
So I'm just wondering if it looked almost human, what about this didn't look human?
No, it didn't look human as far as the skin tone and basically the shape of it and the size.
How was its head size compared with a normal human, for example?
Brain was kind of a little bit bigger. And some of the nose was very, very small. And the ears were just like holes. Mouth was very small.
Now, why were they bringing you out here at all, anyway, to see an alien? What was the point?
To go back and tell the president they actually had one.
So he did not know at this point if there was an alien at S4?
No.
What did you do then at Area? Were you done, or did you have other things to do with
Yeah,
S4?
so basically we were kind of done, went back to Area 51. They took us into the main building, and there we saw a U-2, which of course we didn't know existed. And a model of the SR-71.
Yeah, the Blackbird.
So, but like I mentioned earlier, it was not a model of the current Blackbird.
It was an earlier version.
But an early version.
Did you go directly to Washington after this? Or did
Yes.
you go somewhere else? How did they get, did you fly regular airline or?
We flew back to the commuter plane back to the air base, and then took President Eisenhower's Lockheed Electra back to Washington.
You and your supervisor,
Yeah.
superior officer, and now you're meeting with the president?
Yes.
Can you describe this?
Well, we met with him in, the second story of the old OSS warehouse building. And Eisenhower and Nixon were there, and also Hoover was there. So he asked us what was going on, and we told him about the alien, the whole situation, and the black projects and so on. And he was just totally shocked. He appeared for the first time to be worried. You know, like he was worried.
I would think that Eisenhower would, I mean, he certainly knew that flying saucers were real.
Yes.
He knew that there were aliens. So I guess I'm just wondering, what would he have been, really surprised about?
Surprised about the black programs. Eisenhower said, got to keep this thing completely secret. You know, can't talk about this.
Your actual name is, I mean, the name you grew up with, that was a different name than what you
Yes.
had in the...
I never used it in the CIA at all.
Now, what about today? You're going on the public record, and this is still sensitive information, even though earlier you talked about, you know, security oaths that maybe expire after a certain period of time.
50 years.
But you're still concerned.
Linda Moldenhau's phone call, her phone was tapped, and they got my phone number, and through the telephone company, they're able to find me, and so on.
When they found you, what happened?
I was going to a grocery store. Two guys in a black suits come out of a black Lincoln town car and came over to see me. And they told me that I better not publish anything or talk to Linda about any more things. So at that time, I did, you know, I stopped.
That was enough to intimidate you.
Yes. Rather remain anonymous. Never show my face on anything.
Really, thank you for doing this.
Yes, this was, I guess, kind of a good idea because I feel much better having talked about it. I kind of feel like there's a load off my shoulders.
Really?
Because I had an awful lot of secrets that I had kept over the years.